Good afternoon from the National Service of the Liberia Broadcasting System in Painesville. Welcome to Newsline. 30 minutes of news from Liberia and other parts of the world. I'm Chap Davis presenting on this Thursday, September 28, 2023 edition of the program. Stories coming up, President George Weah and CDC campaign team conclude tour of Lofa County, leaving citizens highly motivated. Liberian government welcomes United States visa restriction policy targeting those who will undermine democracy in Liberia. Presidential candidates to face off in a major debate ahead of the October 10 elections. And away from home, Burkina Faso detains 4 officers and made coup attempt investigation. Also coming up is a commentary titled Democracy is a Must. We welcome the Council of Churches move on World Trade Sports. Well, update the news in French are all packaged on the program, but first, Grace Tao with a bulletin of news.
President Weah. President George Weah and the CDC campaign team have concluded campaign activities in Lofa County. The theme toured Salaye, Zozo, and Vonjaman. Other areas visited by the Liberian leader include Masabolahun, Kolahun, and Foya. During the political rallies in Lofa County, first-time voters, women, and traditional groups pledged their support for the second-term bid of President was visible throughout the tour. The Liberian leader also reaffirmed government's readiness to foster peace through development by the inclusion of all citizens in the national decision-making process of the country. Meanwhile, President Weah and the CDC campaign team are expected to extend political rallies in Nimba County later today. Citizens of Foya District in Lofa County have pledged support for the re-election bid of President George Weah. They say their decision is based on the enormous contributions of the Weah-led administration in the last 5 years. They also hailed the Liberian leader for the construction of a modern town hall, provision of several solar panels, as well as payment of WAS fees for all 12 graders as some major reasons for their support. Speaking in an ELBC interview Wednesday, the citizens pledged to campaign from door to door to give the CDC standard bearer a resounding victory. United States government has announced new visa restriction policy against individuals who would undermine democracy in Liberia in the upcoming elections. Under Section 212A and 3C of the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act, the visa restrictions is against those believed to be responsible for complicit in undermining democracy in Liberia, including manipulation or rigging of the electoral process. In a statement issued by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the visa restriction affects individuals who use violence to prevent people from exercising their rights to freedom of association and peaceful assembly. In a statement issued, I beg your pardon, that it also includes prevention of political parties, voters, civil society, or the media from disseminating their views or engagement in any other activity designed to improperly influence the outcome of an election. Mr. Blinken said certain family members of such persons may also be subject to these restrictions, warning that persons who undermine democracy in Liberia, including in the lead up to, during, and following Liberia's 2023 elections, may be found ineligible for U.S. visas under the policy. He clarified that the visa restriction policy only applies to specific individuals and is not directed at the Liberian people or the government of Liberia. Meanwhile, the Liberian government has welcomed the latest United States government visa restriction policy intended to target those who undermine democracy in Liberia. The policy government believes further reinforces President George Weah's expressed commitment to building a more democratic society grounded in respect for the rule of law, free expression and association, as well as the holding of free and fair elections. Government said this was the last week and during various conversations with U.S. stakeholders, including U.S. Sachet d'Affaires Catherine Rodriguez. In a release, quotes the government as saying it believes the U.S. statement coming at a time when inflammable rhetoric by politicians have been on the rise will aid its effort to calm public anxiety around the upcoming democratic exercise. Meanwhile, the government has also welcomed the arrival in the country of scores of election observers from the ECOWAS, EU, US, and other observer missions from around the world. It said this comes as international partners in Liberia have commended various stakeholders, including the Elections Commission, for the that's methodical and open manner in which they have conducted themselves so far. Internews Liberia, with funding from USAID, is expected to conduct a two-day presidential debate. The debate will be held in Monrovia and Bong County, with broadcasts on over 60 radio stations across the country. 20 presidential candidates are expected to be divided into two groups, with the first set being held in Monrovia Tuesday, October 3rd, and the second on Friday, October 6th in Banga, Bong County. Internews Liberia Deputy Head of Mission Jefferson Massa said the initiative is part of Internews support for electoral democracy. Speaking in an interview on ELBC Thursday, Mr. Massa said the debate is intended to help citizens hear from their candidates as to what they intend to do if elected into office. The Health Ministry, under the One Health platform, has released a startling data showing annual increase in rabies cases across the country. Rabies is a deadly animal disease caused by the saliva of the infected animal. The Health Ministry data shows that a total of 2,093 rabies cases were reported in 2022. Of that number, 6 deaths were reported. The national rabies focal person at the National Public Health Institute of Liberia, Avan Coker, told the Super Morning Show on Thursday that those cases were merely caused by dog bites.
It is our hope that nobody dies from dog bite. Due to some circumstances that we are still investigating, we are still seeing deaths in people exposed to dog bite.
Also speaking, the director for Veterinary Epidemiology Unit at the Ministry of Agriculture, Eddie Fangalo, attributed the increase of rabies cases to irresponsible dog ownership in the country. And beneficiaries of Kids Educational Engagement Project, Chile's program, have highlighted the importance of young women's participation in decision making. In an ELBC interview Thursday, Asha Yon and Victoria Mazi said the move will promote gender equality and self-esteem for young women across the give rise to human resource infrastructure development. Young and Mazi at the same time urged young women aspiring for leadership positions to further dream in making their country better. Meanwhile, beneficiaries are calling on the government to provide protection for women candidates in the October 10 elections.
Grace Tao with the news bulletin. She'll be back on the program with the weather update and later with the foreign developments. You're listening to News Half Hour. We are also live online at www.elbcradio.com. One of the top stories on this edition of Newsline, President George Weah and CDC campaign team conclude tour of Lofa County, leaving citizens highly motivated. Now, a new U.S. visa restriction policy has been issued for individuals who would undermine democracy in Liberia in the upcoming elections. United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken announced the new policy Wednesday. Valerie Kamara has been reading through the statement and now reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken